Why, hello, Fargo. I don't really know anyone named Fargo, but it rhymed. I'm going to give you a little garden walk today, and we're going to talk about a few things. So hopefully it'll interest you. I've started potting things up and trimming things back as I can. I've got a lot of work to do, so to that end, let's get started. I was just sitting here thinking a little while ago, a pot makes a big difference. And so I'm going to take this Japanese green maple, take it over there. That's a rectangle pot, but I don't like that one. I like this better. And I'm going to trade that out. A lower profile to complement the low spreading habit of or design of that tree. And I think that's going to work. Again, I've been here doing lots of work, and I've potted up many of plants, and we're going to see some of those. I'm going to take this Japanese green maple, root over rock out of that, and put it into a pot. It may even go into that pot, but I do want it into a shallow container. And if I don't like the pot, I could very well take a slab of slate or something like that and put it on top of that. But again, I've been doing a lot of work here. I've got in a lot of pots that I was able to get over the Christmas holiday. And so the temperature is coming up to a nice place where I can get outside in a t-shirt and work. I see buds, you know, swelling on different plants around, and it's great. I got a couple of pomegranates here. That is one that I bought from a store. It was like 10 bucks about 6 years ago, and I've grown it in the container, so it's grown pretty small but steady. This one is an air layer off of a larger plant that I bought from a nursery and grew it in the ground. And of course I air layered this part out, and I will be doing what I can with that. A Japanese black pine, and that's just going to grow like that for a few years. Another Japanese black pine. That seedling was from a seed that was brought into the country by a bonsai person from the Fort Walton Beach Bonsai Club in Northwest Florida. And I got the seedling at an auction. And that's a trident maple. And as you can see here, we have a rock embedded into the trunk of that. And let's see, I can turn this a little bit, and it's well embedded into that, and you can see the exposed roots. I just lifted this yesterday, and I've been growing this over several years and extending it year by year from its growing container to expose more and more roots. Where the rock is, there was a blemish in the trunk, and in fact it was this exact shape. So I found a suitable piece of lava rock, and I contoured the tree ever so slightly to embed that, and I wrapped it with tape for several months, and there we have it. Boom bam, Bob's your uncle. And again, lots of work. This trident maple right here, I don't like the way it looks. A big massive root on the surface and a small root on that side. So what I've decided to do with this is to get the roots to develop even more on the back side of that. I just covered it with soil and wrapped it with plastic. I'm going to take a seedling and graft it into the top part of this root. And by this fall, it will be grafted well enough that I could sever this big root from that. But I'm not going to rush it. I will wait until next spring, and then I'll sever the root from the base of that trunk. As a matter of fact, right here, where you see the little black spot right there, not my finger, the top of that, I took a piece off of there, and that is right here. Okay, this is the root extending up, and that's the seedling that I grafted onto that. And it's growing nicely. I set it in this container, and it's wrapped around a rock, which I'm going to be taking this out of the container, checking the roots, verifying, you know, that I'm getting the results that I want, and then I'll place it back in that container. Or if I like the roots well enough, hey, I'll extend it out, and then we'll go from there. That was an air layer Trident maple, and it's on a slab, and it's growing really nicely. I haven't touched it yet, but I don't think I really need to do anything except to wait for the buds to really break, and then I can do some trimming. I'm getting ready to put this little Trident Grove into a pot, or again, I can use a slab. And speaking of slab, we have this affair right here, which is Japanese green maple, and you can see an oak tree growing up in it. For all intents and purposes, they're inseparable. The roots are intertwined, intermeshed between the oak and the maple, so I just left it, and I will be reducing that oak tree a little bit more. I've got 2 pieces of gray slate there, and I just simply wired it together right here, and I wrapped it all the way around the circumference of that. I've got soil in between the 2 rocks to give the roots a place to go, and that'll help any further anchoring of the trees to the top rock. I thought about really securing it permanently, the top rock to the bottom, but if I want to move it and reduce the rock size or do something differently, it'll be easier for me to manipulate that. But again, I did a little carving yesterday, and this will further develop as time goes on. Again, a pot makes a difference. I just potted this up yesterday. It's a little Japanese green maple, and these have just been growing here for quite a while, no issues there. This Japanese green maple I potted in December, and I put this seedling in there to give more roots, or the appearance of more roots growing. You can see right here there's some surface roots, and this is over a rock to give more character to the planting. I have not wounded this area yet because when I put it together, it was still cold, and I didn't want any, well, I wanted to reduce the chances of fungus or bacterial damage to the area. So now that we're getting to a place where I see bud swelling, you can see right here, and you can see the bud swelling, and so the tree is starting to grow and it's starting to become active, and so I'll go back sometime soon and wound that, and we'll be on our way. And depending on what I want to do with this, which this seedling actually is dissimilar from the rest of this tree, but for the sake of design, I may leave a piece of this branch here, depending on depending on how I view it once the wound is healed. But I put it in this place just to get the shape and to get the movement that I wanted in the tree at that time, because my seedlings are getting older and older, and I wanted to be able to manipulate the seedling without much fanfare. This tree I just potted yesterday, and unfortunately I don't have a lot of background stuff to shield out the other things, nor do I have an assistant to help me, but you can see the movement in that trunk, and you've got that armature or lower branch going that way, several upper branches. And if I decide to sell that, you know, it's up to someone if they want to keep all of the upper branches or if they just want to trim that out and design their upper branch from a single branch. But when I look at trees, a lot of times I see many branches going up from the trunk, extending up with an open crown, and that's how I like my trees. Again, fresh potted up yesterday. I wired the lower branch here, which for all intents and purposes, that lower branch is superfluous. You know, it's not needed really. I couldn't take it out to the right here and make it make any sense at all. But for me, the exercise was wiring and bending heavier branches that are not exactly supple. So I wrapped it with some black electrical tape, and I've got 2 twists and 2 size wires there, plus I've got it wired in or pulled back with a piece of guy wire to secure it, and then I pull that branch back away from the viewing area also. But again, a nice trunk that's almost 3 inches. Started from an air layer several years ago and just grown and monitored. And this was a little seedling I dug up out of the ground a couple of days ago, potted up, put wire on it, and so it's basically growing. And as I see a design, you know, worthy of the size of the trunk and the container that it has in, I'll trim and cut back some of these upper branches, which the whole tree is probably 2 feet tall, 24 inches, 26 inches tall, but a lot of that is just branches that need to come off and to force division of branches. But again, lots of work started right now, and it's January, and well, pretty close to the last week of January, as a matter of fact. That's an oak tree which I was growing in a container, and I cut it down and grew these branches back last year, and potted this up probably a month ago now, thereabouts. And so here we got some wire on it. More carving will have to be done in the upper part of the tree. But again, like I mentioned, I like airy, open tops, and you can see all of the branches coming up. But again, if I sell it, hey, the owner can do what they will. But for right now, that's my baby, and I'm doing it the way I do it. Trying to take the top out of that shimpaku, and I'll make this bottom part a cascade, probably a cascade with a rock underneath this area, and then the top, who knows what I'll do with that. Tanuki, juniper I started from a cutting, and the crepe myrtle wood there, I preserved it, stained it, and it's looking pretty good right now. Nice and easy peasy. Some gardenia starts that someone gave me, and whenever I cut stuff, most of the time they go into a pot to grow off. A gardenia that I dug up out of my yard off the fence over there, and so that's right, we're not on the fence anymore about bonsai. We're going for it. Japanese green mound juniper. I actually bought that plant in a gallon pot several years ago, and I've been growing it. That is a cutting off of one of my Japanese green mound, and I call that my crackpot series. I had that pot, and it actually had another Procumbiums nana in it. Took it to work when I worked. The gardeners knocked it over, broke the pot, left it on the ground and whatnot. I found it after work. I brought it home, and now it's been close to 20-some years that I've actually had that pot. And probably 3 years now, I put that setup together, but the juniper is older than 3 years now. But I put the setup together about 3 years, so it's been in this pot for about 3 years, and Bob's your uncle. There you have it. Oh, and when I look back at the cutting, that juniper, when it was a young start, oh, I can't believe how puny and sickly it looked. I don't know what I saw in it, but red cedars, eastern red cedars, just a little grove. The tray I made out of concrete, the hydraulic cement, and it's been doing fine. And it's been sitting right there for all of our weather. Well, actually I did take it down and put it on the ground, but for the 30-degree weather, it's been sitting there. When it was getting into the 20s, I actually set all of these on the ground. I'm regrowing that little shumpaku that I got from a bonsai auction, and it was pitiful, of course. I'm working on some sarissas on rocks, and right here is a hawthorn. I got the plant from a auction, bonsai auction, and I set the rest of it up, put it in that windswept position. The former owner, he vacillates about whether or not it's a hawthorn or something else, so I'm not really sure. And I know a hawthorn leaf when I see it, and I'm waiting for this to I guess to leaf out again, and then I'll verify. But that was an air layer, Japanese green maple. And like I said, a pot makes a big difference on the appearance of our bonsai. That's a Japanese elm, or Chinese elm, and you see that I'm missing leaves. You know, there are a few leaves there. It got so cold here, it knocked the leaves off. Typically in this area, my elms are not deciduous, and that is a holly. I dug the little stump up, and just so you can see, there's my hand, that's a thumb, but that's a pretty fat looking little stump there. That's 3 7-inch pot, and I potted that up a few weeks ago, and you know, I've been working on the branches for probably a year and a half right now. And again, I dug the stump up from a friend's place, and I've got my trident maple. That's a multi-branch. I call that a 3-branch affair that I grew from a seedling. That trident maple, and that I picked up at auction, and those trunks are about 6 inches on the 2 largers, and that's depending on how you measure. That's a petrified piece of wood, and it's the roots of that trident goes around the wood. So, and again, that's petrified wood. So hey, I like the setup. I don't particularly like the tree itself, but having that petrified wood and the roots around it, marvelous, simply marvelous. That's my trident maple on a rock. That trident maple is a cutting from my primary trident maple, which is in the front, and I lost the top out of it after I took the cutting, and it was set in a pot at the time. And I took the plant for show, you know, show and tell at the Bonsai Club, and I came home, and that week the top died out of it. So I thought about it for a year or so, what I would do with this. You know, of course, I nursed the plant back to health and was hoping it wouldn't die, because that is basically the third part of a series of bonsai that I have from the same plant, and I'd kind of like to keep it. So again, I nursed it back to health, and I put it on that rock last year. That boxwood got from an auction in this huge mica pot, and that mica pot is it's huge. It's huge. That mica pot is, yep, 23. Yep, it's 23-inch mica pot, and I got the whole affair for $50. Yep. So again, that boxwood, just typical Korean boxwood. You know, get it at your garden center or whatever. Pull it up out of your neighbor's yard. Leave yours alone. Take theirs, and Bob's your uncle. But anyway, I potted it down into that smaller pot. Wired it a little bit, and I will be going back to do more carving on those areas right there. I kind of started just to see what I wanted to do with it and which way I'd go. That part was already there. I cleaned it out a little bit more. So this I might just open up into this, especially to allow water to drain through here and not have that completely rot out. But personally, I wouldn't mind if all of this was carved flat just about and opened up all through there and leave that, you know. So again, I got to pay the water bill. My elm, I have no idea what kind of elm that is. I took the little plant from the side of the road in a neighboring community. Like I said, go get your neighbor's plants. Don't take your own plants unless you can't find one like it. Well, anyway, I found that beside the road, and so I dug it up, and I make cuttings. But you know, whether it's a Drake elm, well, I don't think it's a Drake elm, but I think it may be a Caitlin elm. And the top of it started dying out last summer, and that's an inch, about 1.25 inches at this point, and that's 2 inches at the base there. And so I brought it over into the shade, nursed it back, I whacked it back, and then this part started growing out, and of course it was growing horizontal, and I left my wire on too long. But at any rate, I put the style in the design. I potted that up in that container yesterday, and I'm liking it. I'm liking it real good. So again, a pot makes a difference to a plant also. That's a light colored chocolate pot, and it's to me it suits this tree. The dusky greenness of this this maple tree, it seems to suit it really well. I've got long extended branches in the upper regions here, and again, it's all about style and design. And with me, a lot of times, depending on the plant, I don't rush, because, you know, of course, I'm no bonsai master, and even though I can graft on branches, this and that, but hey, I've got whole large intact original branches here, so I'll take my time, and then when I make my decision, it's done. Bob's my uncle, and I'm not going back after that, you know. Oh, I shouldn't have taken this off, I shouldn't have done that. Done is done. you know, stick a fork in it. But I take my time so that when I get to that point, there's no regrets. It's like, hey, it is what it is. Move on, Superman. But this tree I dug, I think Friday evening, and planted in this pot. It was an air layer from a tree I have on the other side of that side of the property, and I've been growing it in the soil for about 3 years now in the ground, mainly to get the roots established. And oh, they're beautiful roots. You know, hey, I don't know what you think about plants or whatever, but those roots were beautiful when I dug them up. And again, some of the stuff I'm working on, more cedars, camellia. For some reason, camellias and I just don't mesh too well. So for me, that means I will spend more time with camellia. Now, whether my girlfriend gets mad that I'm spending time with camellia or azaleas, I said camellia, didn't I? I meant azalea. See, I don't even know the girl's name. Silly man. Chinese pistache, just wired it to give some upper airy looking branches, and this will probably be the last up that I do on major branches, unless I can get one more major branch to come on, which if that develops right there, I'll bring that one up, and then all of my secondary and tertiary branches will come from that. A little group of trident maples, and here we are in February, and January rather, last week, and I've got leaves starting to come out on that little jewel. Japanese green mound juniper, and you can see some of the tanukis that I've made. This one right here I like a lot. That tanuki, it's still got the support structure in there, tape, screws, nails, staples, wire to hold it to the wood. I've done a preliminary bit of preservative on the wood, but I have to go back and do that some more. For me, this is really lovely. Let's do this. Let's do this. Sorry. So, yep. But that has a nice structure to it. Tanuki, shimpaku. So I bought the plant several years back, and let me tell you, I put it on to this cedar, and I don't know what happened, but I guess moving it around, and this thing started growing like gangbusters. It's so lush and green and full. I mean, it's just like, wow, it woke up when I changed its features. So I guess, you know, putting it on that, and that's some cedar from the Hurricane Irma when it came through. Broke that off of a tree in my front. So this is our Irma bonsai. And pots, how they make a difference. There's a oak on a rock that I had in an old plastic training pot, and this, I'll always love this right here. That's my root over rock trident maple that started from seedlings, and that pot is 8 inches, and you can see the roots right there and there. And this is actually a seedling that I attached, fused that together, and you can see the roots coming around this way. I should be taking this out of this container this year and doing a little root work. That I just put together. It was a seedling that I cut back, got it to branch, and that's a Japanese green maple. This is a trident maple, rooted piece, simply rooted. That is my air layered Japanese green maple, and I'll be doing some more work on it. Lots of up branches, as you can see, and that I will be creating a rock effect to go underneath the that big ugly root, so that way I'll make the root pretty. So I'll make an artificial rock to give some lift on this side to have a design, and then a smaller piece will come here. So all of that will be attached in through there. And of course I'll have to build a template and, you know, style and design my rock to be on this side on an elevated level, and then a lower rock on this side. But my other thought was just to attach a seedling to that and either grow a smaller tree out here or take the root off. Well, if I can find some different way of doing a thing for the experience of bonsai, I'm going to do it differently. So I haven't tried the rock affair yet, and I've seen how folks have, I guess you can say, patched up holes with concrete and created rock designs with concrete in gaps in their tree to make it look as though the roots grew over the rock, where in fact the rock was poured concrete around the roots. And that's a trident maple that I'm working on. If I get around to it, I'll go in and do root work, which will be heavy root work. And of course, you see the thick, heavy upper roots here. And I've already said what I do with some roots like that with the attaching seedlings. And I want you to see the bottle brush. And this has been outside, okay, all of our stormy cold weather, that bottle brush tree. And so, and we've been down to the lowest, low 20s, okay, and that's a green maple over rock. This is what I call a vase-shaped maple in a real shallow container, and I really like this also. These camellias, I may be grafting on these, but they're the blooms, medium-sized blooms. A wisteria, I just potted it up, and we'll see how that goes. And that's a little flowering cherry. Okay, now there's much to see, much to see. And there's another piece of slate that I could use for a planting. Root over rock, trident maple, little tiny oak in a little, I guess, water boy vase kind of thing. And that pot is only like 4 inches, but there you have it. You can grow stuff any place. Trident maple grove, and there's some of my Japanese green maples. And the flowers are gone off now, but that camellia, and there's a pretty large planting of the firethorn. So anyway, let's take a look at this, which is a forsythia root over rock affair. So there we have it, nice roots. nice branches. And there's another forsythia exposed roots. Let's see, what else do we have here? Yeah, we can show you fig trees. We've got figs. We've got plenty of figs. Okay, there's one right there. And all of these have been potted over these last few weeks. At the end of December till here we are to the end of January. And we've got figs, different pots, different shapes, different girths. And that right there is almost 4 inches, and it's about, I guess, 18 inches tall at the thick of the trunk. And that fig is on a rock, and this is just like a little fig grove planting. Got little figs. All of that is one root. And that's a little plastic, well, little glass flower pot from a florist arrangement. That was a ground layered piece that I took off of my fig tree, you know, a while back, and we'll see how it goes. These fig trees seem to not like direct sun. They scar and blister, and they don't do too well, so you have to be careful about how you expose the fig trees. I see in California a lot of people paint theirs, you know, but again, hey, you got to do what you got to do. More fig trees. And that's a little Japanese green maple on the rock, and that's just a piece of flat concrete that I found around here somewhere, and it's been there for several years now. And that's an L on a piece of concrete rock. The birds and the squirrels get in here and they go digging, so I have to come back and add soil to them periodically. More figs on the ground there. And this is a big giant air layer trident maple. And here we have a number of rooted cuttings of firethorn, pyracantha. And some I've already put into bonsai containers for training, and some are still growing in the pots. Just an oak tree. And this is crabapple profusion, and I'm thinking after this year what I'll do is air layer this part out right here and get a better perspective right there, and I'll lower the tree overall, regrow the top, and then I'll make 2 more pieces. So from right here to there, from right there to this branch coming out this way, and then the final piece will be this top section. And I'll get 3 trees out of this one for bonsai. And you know, so if I go that way, that's what I'll do. Crepe myrtle. I hear a lot of bad things about crepe myrtle, different people. Oh, I hate those things. You can't do anything with them. You can't wire them. You can't bend them. Well, I wire them, I bend them, and I do stuff with them. So crepe myrtles are fine with me. And I've grown this tree in this pot for 3 seasons or so now. I won't say all of my crepe myrtles, but the biggest part of my crepe myrtles come right out of this yard. You know, what I do is pick up cuttings when they top the trees in the fall. I'll grab those cuttings from the side of the road and I'll stick them in bins and I'll get them to root. And I'm talking about 6 foot, 8 foot pieces that are, you know, at least an inch, you know, 3/4 of an inch. You know, it depends on what they have. Some are even larger than an inch, but I'll put them in to big old growing tubs, such as that growing tub over there, which is, I think that's about a 15 gallon tub. But I have larger tubs also, and I'll just take some sand, dirt, whatever I can get my hands on, and stick those in, and there you go, have it. Bob's your uncle. You got rooted cuttings the next year. Not a problem. But again, you separate them, then you grow them off for a while, plant them in the ground or whatever you want to do. This is a pomegranate that I was mentioning that I had over on the other side that I had air layered. This is the base. And right now, I'm getting ready to do some more carving on this. And that's about 36 inches right there. The base of it is about 4 to 5 inches. But again, I'm looking at it and I think I don't want a plant that large. So I'm considering 3 plants there. Okay. The base of the trunk coming up this way. And then you can see the branch coming off and up that direction. I know that axe handle's kind of obscures some of that. Let's see if that works. Okay, there's the branch. Okay, right there, that'll be the base. And then from that point up, I'll air layer that out. And this crooked branch at the base over here, I'll air layer that off. That, in fact, is the original plant. This side over here. When I bought that from the nursery, that was the original plant. And that water sprout, that sucker, the main trunk, came out like gangbusters and took off. Well, at the time, I just let it grow to get girth over the entire thing. And next thing you know, it had overtaken the original plant. So it's like, oh well, not a problem. I've got a larger base due to that, and it's all good. But again, I don't want a plant that large, and I do sell some of these. So if I were to ship or try to ship that, you know, it'd be a nightmare for me because I'm not set up for commercial shipping and all of that falter off. So Bob's not my uncle in that case. Crepe myrtles, I carved on that a few days ago and set these out here in the open, bright sun. We got rain overnight last night, and those that I just showed you are probably 2 to 3 inches at the base. These are large boys here, okay? They're not behemoths, but they're large, okay? Those are 5, 6 inches at the base, 5, 6 inches at the base, probably 24 inches, 36 inches, 36 inches, and you can see the holes all the way through. These 2 trees, in fact, is one tree. It was given to me because this guy was, a friend of mine was cleaning up his yard, and he knew that I wanted trees and such, so he called me, and I said, I'm tired of working and digging crepe myrtles, and I don't need them, but I'll take it anyway. So I came home, and I got my chainsaw, and you can see right there, they were fused together, one root system, and there you have it. I whacked them with the chainsaw. They have their own main trunks, so that part wasn't affected. And I'll do some carving like on that stump right there, and probably do a little more carving around the opening there, right there. And I like that piece of dead wood on the side, so I'll carve on that also, and even at the crown. But again, if I sell these, hey, that's up to the new owners. But, and these are crepe myrtles that, you know, I either, like this right here, that's one of those that they call crepe myrtles. When people top the tree, you see the knot. I took that knot, put it in the ground, put some water on it, and boom, after a few months, hey, Bob's my uncle. Another crepe myrtle right there, and again, a rooted cutting. You can see the severe cut on that I made. Stuck it in the ground, rooted cutting. And that was from a tree that I got probably 3 Decembers ago. And I got the main trunk up front. And that was actually a tree. Okay, I called it a tree, but like I said, most of my plants around here were from cuttings. And I've grown them over 30 years plus, okay? And so, you know, it's like, well, I know that they're all rooted cuttings, except for the ones that I stole from my mom. I mean, my daddy gave me from my mom. And she tells me about that even till today. And it's been 35 years or more. But anyway, that's a nice piece right there, which is a rooted, oh no, this is an air layer. Okay? And this little fella right here, I think that pot suits it, but it's an air layer. No, that is actually a root. When I dug a tree up, I saw the flat piece here, the triangle piece, and I stood the root up in the ground, and it took root, and so there you have it. That's a honeysuckle that I'm getting ready to work on. And this is crepe myrtle of crepe myrtles so far. That, my friends, is a crepe myrtle. Over to the left of the back end of that greenhouse there, where you see the white poly, like right in this area here, I used to have a greenhouse that extended all the way across the property. And this was a crepe myrtle that I had in that area. And if you see the red pots over there on the ground, just to the left of that, right in that area, you can see some crepe myrtle suckers coming up. Well, this was in that batch. And I dug into the ground to get this out of the ground. And all of this, let me see, from about there all the way down was root, because I would just cut the crepe myrtle down to the ground. I didn't want the crepe myrtle there, I didn't need it there, and year after year I would cut it down, and the shoots would come up, the suckers would come up, and I kept cutting it down. And finally, when I started reclaiming the area back there, I realized that I had bunches of lava rocks back there, large lava rocks, which I can use in my plantings and so forth. So I started claiming the lava rocks, and I got moving, and then I started digging this thing out. And next thing you know, boom, look what I found in there. Bob's my uncle. That is, I think that's a 15-inch pot. That trunk, like right across the base here, is, I think, about 8 inches. And then, of course, from that area, whatever's exposed to that area, you know, the better part of that 15-inch pot there. So I haven't officially measured any of that, but nice movement in it. Boom, Bob's my uncle on that one. And this is what I do with cuttings. I got elms there, trident maples. You know, when I come in here and work on stuff, I take the cuttings, and you see that trident in the ground right there. I topped it out, and this is supposedly a root over rock, which I'm going to have to put some seedlings on there to create roots, because I don't like the way it's developing. Here comes the rain again. Oh yeah, and my Japanese, I got to get that off the ground again. I took it down for the weather so it wouldn't be blowing around. Excuse me. There we go. And that crepe myrtle I grew in the ground. I stuck some cuttings in the ground and they just kept growing, and I kept cutting them back, and then they grew up into twins, and I kept trimming them back to grow them as twins. The rain is coming again. These are some oak trees that I'm working on. I may top these out again, and all along there, from this point all the way there, and then where the table is, the length of that table, I've got crepe myrtles on both sides of the table, in the ground in pots, and then more over there to the left. And this is what I'm working on now. That is our Japanese green maple that I'm gonna do some carving on and trim it on, and it may even go into a pot directly. Greenhouse. And this is what I did a little work on. As a matter of fact, instead of me doing this video, I was supposed to have been trimming on this, doing carving on this Weigelia. So, and this also, that's one plant, and that's another plant. And these are rooted cuttings. That's the main plant. I took the little cuttings years ago from my post office, and these are pink, and I grew it. I would whack it back, let it grow back, and again, this is the base. So that's what I got out of probably 12 to 15 years ago now. And that's a rooted cutting off of this same plant, and I'm going to be carving right through there on the top part, and it will likely go into a pot. And these are cuttings that I just took off of these that I said that I was going to do the carving on, the large one, and these are some rooted cuttings that I've got. Some of these are ready to go into a bonsai pot, or even to be shown like this or sold like that. But they've got some potential. They've got some potential. But anyway, the rain is starting to come. I was supposed to have been in there carving Japanese green maple right there. And in these next few days, I'll be digging it up and potting it. And that's just out there, the bed where I do my cuttings and such. You can see that Japanese green maple. That's going to be a rooted cutting, and pot right back there. Lots of small rooted cuttings. This piece right here is probably 3/4 of an inch. Big crepe myrtle pieces. These are 4, 5, 6 inches. This crepe myrtle right here is one of the crepe myrtles that I got about 2 Decembers ago, toward the end of the month. And I think I ended up, I will do a lot of serious carving on this, and I think this back piece has finally died out. So that'll be carved, and whether or not I continue with the 3 pieces, or just carve stuff out and use one trunk, remains to be seen. Crepe myrtle, and that's a piece that I will be doing a cascade. Big huge piece of crepe myrtle, and that is a rooted cutting. Simply rooted. Stick it in the ground. Good sunny spot, water, and You can see all of these and all of those over there. That actually was all filled in, but some of the trees that are in the pots now. See, all of these. And that pool is where I water and soak and fertilize a lot of my plants. It has water in it because it's been raining, plus with the freeze, and I let the water drip. These are large pieces, and they're just rooted cuttings. Rooted cuttings. As a matter of fact, that is a white crepe myrtle, and that's an air layer. But this right here is a light pink, and that's a rooted cutting. Okay, and that little pot, you know, 5-gallon pot there, or a 3-gallon pot, cut down. Again, rooted cutting. So I got to do a lot of carving. And this is a pretty good sized trunk, but it's really tall. And I'm debating whether I want to actually bring that down or just let it grow like that. And it will probably stay like that. But a lot of the rooted cuttings came off of this tree. And I think this is a 20-gallon container. But anyway, that's a full-size tree, and the scars on it are from the dump loader that pushed it and moved it around. And so pretty much I'm at the place where this is going to be my angle, because this swerves back in this way and then back out that way. And I like that movement. And then the base of it is really nice. High def would really be great. But anyway, it spreads out and it curves in and back out. So I will work to keep some of these down here. This part, the branches here, will be moved out some. Again, some people say they can't wire crepe myrtles or whatever. If it breaks, and another shoot will grow. And but if you take your time, you can move it some. And a lot of this will be carved in the center, will be carved in dead wood. And the main, this taller stuff in the center will be reduced. And this side over here will be the apex. So, and I'm thinking about getting this into a shallow container, regardless of whether I cut and trim and do anything. But again, growing bed, firethorn, grapevines, rosemary. Over here, green maple primarily. And these are oaks that I grew from seedlings. In other words, when I dug up some of these green maples from my source, these seedlings were intertwined in the roots, and I just pulled them aside because they look different from any oaks that I have around on this property. And I've got lots of water oak. Some people call these live oaks or whatever, but I call a live oak the Quercus virginianus, which is any of these trees straight across the street and on the corner of my place here. Look at that movement. Japanese green maple and Japanese green maple. And I'll be air layering pretty soon. And I'm debating if I want to take this now or air layer it down and then do something different. But I think that I may just air layer in that area and take the movement that's there. Now I have to do something with that ugly stump, which I'd probably end up bifurcating that area. In other words, cutting a V in that and using the branches coming out to the left and just cutting a little V in there and then using probably between 4 and 6 inches on the vertical, and just regrow the top and cutting that stump there back a little more perhaps. This tree is where I took the air layers out of some of the tops of, well, I took the air layers for some of the bonsai I had in the back that showed in the nice pots, including the one that I said that I was going to change to a green pot versus the brown pot that it was in, and the nice one that I had that was, I think it's in a red pot. But anyway, that is a small leaf trident maple, and that's the one and only tree, or my primary tree. I've got 2 pieces now that are in the ground growing, and all of these are cuttings from it, and I found them a little more difficult, if you will, or less likely to strike than the typical or common trident maple, and so I'm working on other stuff. I'm going to air layer some of this also. I've taken pretty much all of the little small shoots off, and then these larger shoots I'm going to try to air layer, so perhaps this fall, well actually next year sometime, I'll be able to dig this tree and start working on the trunk. I've got a Naruto over there that I'm working on. It's starting to rain pretty good here. And I'm going to work this area for more of my trident maples. They grow like gangbusters. And air layers in the trident maple tree. And it's time for me to get out of the rain. As if I didn't know that. So anyway, forsythia cuttings, various cuttings, Japanese green maples, trident maples, not the small leaf, but the common, and there you have it. So anyway, whenever it's time for you to work your plants, go for it. And the plants will show you. You just have to take a view and see what they're telling you. I've got a pretty good weather forecast, and if the outlook is bleak at any particular point for anything that I do, I could always stick the plant in the greenhouse. But typically at this point in the growing season here in Northwest Florida, I'm good to go as long as the plants are showing vitality. If they're showing life, I can start moving on them to do my rooting, cuttings, and all of that. All right, a long video, but you can see a lot of stuff. All right, bye-bye.